Hi, everyone. Thank you, World Journal. Thank you guys so much for having me here today. My name is Jenny Wheatley, as the host mentioned, and I just want to thank World Journal. So today we're going to talk about the successful UC applicant and talk a little bit about inside the UC application. So what does that look like? What do students have to do? I know a lot of students are, thinking about applying to the UC schools, different types of UC schools, UCLA, Berkeley, San Diego, Irvine, all of these different types of UC schools. And I am here to help you talk about what goes inside the UC application and also what is it that UC admissions is looking for when it comes to applicants. So the successful UC applicant is what we're going to talk about today. This is a little bit about me. I won't go into the details, but if you guys have any questions, if you ask me in English on the YouTube comment section, I'll be more than happy to answer that at the end of our webinar if we have any kind of support or time. But if you have questions in Chinese, you can always ask us as well on the YouTube channel, and I'd be more than happy to have our staff member contact you to answer more of your questions at the end. Okay, so before we get started, I do want to let you guys know that we do have a podcast. I hope some of you guys are listening to podcasts these days, but basically we talk about different parts of the college admissions through the podcast. So if you had questions about what classes to schedule in 9th grade or what to do in 10th grade, what activities should I do, all of these different types of questions, you're actually more than welcome to listen to our podcast. It's completely free. You can actually go on your iPhone and you can, check out thehallpasspodcast.com on our website. And you can check us out. And we have a lot of different types of seasons and different podcasts, little quick episodes on things that you might be interested in. So come and check us out, www.thehallpasspodcast.com. Okay, so let's talk about UC admission. So obviously this year, UCs are getting more and more challenging to get accepted. It's becoming more and more difficult to get into college. I know this is really tough. But anyways, let's talk a little bit more about UC admissions and look at the data. So I'm sure some of you guys have already seen this, but this is UCLA and UC Berkeley. UCLA had 108,874 applicants, and it is the #1 most popular college to apply to in the world. So it is a very popular college to apply to, and their acceptance rate is about 14%. And unfortunately, with UC admissions, that admit rate is probably going to get lower and lower with more and more students trying to apply. And as you guys know, the UCs this year have gone test optional, which means that if you don't have an SAT or ACT, you can still apply to the UC schools. So that just means more students are probably going to be applying to the UC schools. Just so you know, this is something that you want to be aware of. So I did put the ACT and SAT composite scores up there for reference. I know that the UCs are test optional this year, but test optional means that you can still submit the test scores if you would like to. So if you are still interested in submitting, you said, I already have a really great SAT score, I have a really great ACT score, then go ahead and submit it. Good test scores are only going to help you at this point. So you're more than welcome to submit test scores if you want to, but you do not have to. It is test optional. So that is something I do want to mention to you. But overall, if you look at this really quickly, you'll see something called the high school GPA. And the high school GPA is something that the UCs are going to be looking at when they want to admit you. And so for the UC system, the high school GPA is based on the UC GPA. The UC GPA is different from just a regular cumulative GPA that's on your transcript. So if you want to know your UC GPA, very easy. You can go onto Google and type in calculate my UC GPA on there and just check out the UC GPA and see what you have. But they only take into consideration the A through G categories of the classes that you're going to take. So if you don't know what A through G categories are, you can go and check that out on Google as well. A through G categories for UCs. They're not going to count classes like health or things like that. So it's just going to be specifically the A through G category. So history, English, science, language, things like that. And if you still want to know what your UC GPA is, you can always ask your counselor. Your high school counselor at your school should also be able to calculate your UC GPA for you. So that's a little bit about the UCs. Here's a little bit more UC San Diego and UC Irvine, just for comparison. You'll notice that, some of the high school GPAs are still fairly high. You'll notice that, UCI is still wanting a 3.96 or 4.26 for the top 25 to 75 percentile students. So really, they're still looking for pretty high GPAs, but again, that is the A through G requirement GPA. So you might want to check out what your UC GPA is. And then here's UC Santa Barbara and UC Riverside, just so that you can get a little bit more information about these as well. So you can see that UC Santa Barbara is still, there's 90,000 applicants there. UC Riverside, about 50,000. Still a lot of students are applying to these colleges. And like I said, more and more competitive throughout. So yes, this is a little bit about just the data. So if you are just joining us now, welcome to the UC Applicant YouTube streaming with World Journal. We're going to talk about the UC application and what UCs are looking for. If you leave the name, phone number, and email address in the YouTube comment section, we will give you a call back on Tuesday when our office is open again and set you up with a meeting with one of our counselors. You can also ask a question in Chinese, and if you would like us to answer, leave your name, phone number, and email in the YouTube comment section. We will contact you on Tuesday to answer your questions for you. So yes, feel free to leave that in the comment section if you are interested. So let's talk about what UCs want. What is it that they want with college admissions? What are they looking for when it comes to students? What is it specifically? So I'm going to kind of give you a couple of datas. So one piece of data here is from UCLA. This is the common data set from UCLA. And just so you know, every college has information such as this that will give admission officers information on what our college is going to be looking for in terms of students, in terms of applicants, in terms of people we want to admit. So you'll see that, the rigor of secondary school record, their class rank, the academic GPA, standardized test scores, like these are all categories in the academics. What UCLA and most of the UCs are going to consider to be very, very important is going to be your rigor of your secondary school record. So that's going to be how challenging are the classes that you are taking in high school, and then your academic GPA, obviously your standardized test scores, but obviously this year that's going to be test optional, so that will probably be considered if you submit it. And then your essays. These are going to be qualities that UCLA is going to be considered very important. Now, UCLA does not consider the class rank. So if your school has class rank, right? If your school has, I'm ranked number 1 out of 200 or 300 or 500, they're not going to really consider that as part of your application. However, they'll look at other things like your GPA. And then, of course, they're also going to see other things that are very important, like your talent and ability, your character and personal qualities, your volunteer work and work experience, and extracurricular activities. So all of these things are going to be important. Now, just because something says very important versus important does not mean you should care less about what's important. You should care about both, I would say. Care about what's very important and what's important. And what I would like to say is, for the UC school system, what's very important is what most students come with anyways, right? The rigor of secondary school's record, the standardized test scores, the GPA, the application essay, most students are going to come with really good quality academics and things like that. But what's going to set you apart, what's going to make you different from all other applicants is going to be the talent and ability, your character and personal qualities, volunteer experience, work experience, and extracurricular activities. So these are things that are going to be different, and that's going to set you apart. So I would just keep that in mind as you are working through your application. And I'm going to give you tips on what to do in the application itself. So even if you are not a senior right now, if you're a freshman or sophomore, this is a great opportunity to learn more about the UC application. So it's kind of like knowing what is on the test, right? If you know the questions that are going to be on the the test, then you know exactly what to study for. And that's what I'm going to tell you today. I'm going to tell you what's going to be on the test. I'm going to tell you what's going to be on the application so that you can prepare from ninth grade all the way to now exactly what you need to do to stand out as a UC applicant. So let's look at UC Berkeley. So same thing with UC Berkeley. All of the UCs, they do not consider class rank. They don't have that specific question on their application. So they're not going to consider that. But you'll see with UC Berkeley, they're still going to consider what I talked about with UCLA to be very important. Same thing here. And then on top of that, UC Berkeley said they do consider extracurricular activities, your character and personal qualities, volunteer work, and work experience, just slightly different from what they have here, you know, where they see kind of the character and personal qualities and the talent and ability. Berkeley said they're focused more on these other elements as important, right? So this is something that you can look at and consider as well. And then here's UC Irvine, same thing, again, rigor of secondary class record and test scores, GPA, application essay, those are going to be the same. Then they're going to look at extracurricular activities, talent, ability, character and personal qualities, your state residency is what they consider important. And so I want to say something about UC Irvine state residency. UC Irvine likes to admit students who are California state residents. They consider that to be important. One of the missions for UC Irvine is to provide quality education for students in the state of California. So I would definitely say that the state residency is important for UC Irvine. So if you're going to have an advantage if you live in California and you're applying to UC Irvine versus if you're living out of state, or if you're an international student, you'll have a slight advantage if you are living in the state of California. And they also consider volunteer work to be important. So just want to kind of share this. And I see that people are commenting on YouTube with questions, and I will get to those towards the end. So please continue to ask as many questions as you want in English so that I can answer those questions at the end, okay? So here's UC San Diego. You'll notice that they actually consider extracurricular activities, talent, ability, volunteer work, and work experience to be very important. And then you can kind of see what they consider important and considered and not considered. So this is a little bit about UC San Diego. So even with the UCs, you guys will notice that, you know, they all have differences, even slightly, for each of the colleges. Some consider, you know, extracurricular activities to be very important. Some consider, you know, state residency to important, right? So every one of these colleges have different things that they consider to be important. But one thing that we can all agree on is the extracurricular activities for all of these colleges are either going to be considered important or very important, right? And you'll see this in not just UC schools. If you apply to other private schools or other colleges, you'll see this as well. But extracurricular activities are considered to be something that's going to set you apart. And we focus a lot about that at Admission Masters, just because, like I had mentioned, a lot of Asian applicant students tend to have very similar things when it comes to academics. They tend to have very similar GPAs. They tend to have very similar, course selections, right? They're all taking APs and really high-level honors and IB courses. But the one thing that will set you apart, the one thing that's going to be different is going to be the extracurricular activities and some of the other things. So we really try to focus on that to make students stand out and be unique. So let's go inside the UC application, because I do think it's really valuable, like I told you earlier, to see the test questions, right? If you know what's going to be on the test, then you know how to study. And so I'm going to go inside the UC application today so you're able to see what is it that UC applications are looking for. What do I need to prepare since 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and even now if you're a senior and you're going to apply to UCs, what are some things that I have to consider? So let's go into it right away. So the first thing is going to be majors. So when you go into the UC application, there's going to be a section where you choose the majors for the colleges. Now, every college except for UC Berkeley offers an alternate major. So what does that mean? So if you are applying to UC Berkeley, you only choose one major. Okay. But if you're applying to all of these other schools on this list, then you're also going to choose an alternate major. So if you don't qualify or they can't accept you for the major that you chose, then they will consider your alternate major. So let me talk to you a little bit about majors and what is it that colleges are looking for. So first and foremost, be mindful of what majors you choose if they are considered impacted majors. So what is an impacted major? An impacted major is a major that many students apply to, otherwise known as popular majors, right? And so in the world that we live in today, especially with Asian applicants, I would say the most impacted and popular majors are going to be computer science, right? Engineering, business, economics, right? These are going to be very popular majors among Asian applicants. And so it is going to be really important for you to think about that, right? Think about that because at UC Berkeley, their computer science and engineering programs are top tier, right? They're very difficult to get into. So if you want to go to UC Berkeley and you want to study computer science and engineering, maybe it would be a better idea for you to apply as a different major, slightly different than maybe computer science or engineering, such as math or applied math or computational biology or something like this, to have a slightly higher chance of getting accepted. So the one thing that I want to say is the more competitive the major, right, the more challenging it may be for you to get accepted. Because imagine this, let's say at UCLA, we only have 100 spots for psychology majors, but we have 100,000 students who applied as psychology majors. Well, if we only have 100 spots as psychology majors and 100,000 students applied, that makes it a lot more difficult for those students to get accepted. So that is why it's really important for you to be mindful of this. And at Admission Masters, what we like to do is to help students choose their majors by maybe the end of 10th grade. We have a really good idea of what major direction they need to go into. And usually we are focusing on the non-impacted majors. Although I would say that if you are a super top tier student, if you're a super top tier applicant, it is very possible that you apply as, whatever major you want to, and you still have a good chance of getting accepted. I would say this advice is more for students who are not top tier, maybe mid tier or mid to low tier, just to heighten your chance a little bit to get accepted into the colleges you want. You might want to consider, choosing a major that's a little bit less impacted. And I see some questions about that, so I will answer that if I have time towards the end of